Hello and welcome to OvalEdge Live. Um, Today we have our usual guest, Theresa Ancick. She is one of our, the great strategists in the data governance space. She knows data governance ins and out, from left to right or from top to bottom. And today's topic of discussion is data governance framework. Um, and I choose this topic because the reason is that I'm really confused. Whenever we are trying to discuss about data governance framework, how does the company start and move forward further? So, Teresa, the question for you is that, hey, there are so many data governance frameworks that are available in the market or when you search over the Google, but nothing seems to, for me, make sense. Most of them, I read a lot of data governance books. I have read a lot of data governance, but really I am not very clear about the framework ecosystem. And
Yeah,
when you search over the Google and other things, I see that a lot of time I see something like this, a bunch of frameworks available in the market, which tells you have to do so many things, but it's still the clarity is not there. I
not
would
really
say,
clear. Yeah.
can you add some clarity to the data governance framework and help us understand that what really data governance framework is and how it is important for any organization?
Yes. And thanks for having me, Sharad. One of the things that I noticed too is that a lot of the, especially the banking customers, but during audits, the auditors are asking for your data governance policy, and they also want to see your data governance framework. So what I did was develop this presentation so that the organizations that I'm working with can understand and speak in detail about the framework with full understanding of what that is. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a slide that I put together, which is kind of different than our usual LinkedIn Live events. Kayla, if you could bring up my slideshow. So this is about getting a data governance framework in place and understanding the different components and how those components work to support your overall framework. So as in every framework, we want to cover the who, what, why, how, and when. We also want to understand the outputs. And for me, I've separated the outputs into three categories. And I think it's important that we kind of take three swipes at it for the organization because there is a specific benefit in every one of these particular areas. For the organization, for the individuals participating in data governance, and also functionally for the organization, being able to do things more efficiently and cost effective. So what a good framework consists of is how these components work together. So I set about trying to create one slide that shows in detail all of it, which it's not really possible to do. And so this presentation helps to really pull it together so that you understand how they work together.
So I think I really like it, the way you put together that all the why, how, what's, when, and the outputs. So let's start having the discussion around why. And you saying you are putting charter into the why.
Yes.
Is to say like, and we know the charter is a document, and then sometimes we have seen that customers started doing data governance without charter as well, because they want
Yeah,
to
quite often.
they want to start it. And what is why this document is important? The first thing I would also like to put it there, that
Okay.
why the charter document is important,
Awesome.
and why we are doing data governance is also why it needs to be very clear to the organization that that why are we doing it. So if you
Exactly.
can emphasize on that.
So if you'll hear me say a lot in my speaking engagements that there are three enemies of your data governance program. It is lack of focus, chaos, and not having a repeatable onboarding process and clarity in your roles, right? So you don't have to just have the role. We have to have a repeatable process for bringing people into these roles because we cannot handle bringing people in and holding everyone's hand. So the the charter is what keeps the focus of the team. Occasionally, you will have leadership turnover. You will have, oh, I've got Portugal here, yay. You have the team that said, this is the approach that we're going to take. And so when you have leadership changeover, or you have team member changeover, sometimes you'll have somebody come in and they'll say, oh, you guys are doing it wrong, we should be doing it this way. Or I want to be next in line. You may have a leader in your organization that wants to come in and say, no, I need this like this, and I'm doing it this way. The charter is signed off by the executive council, and it's very specific about, I'm going to go to the next slide here. It's very specific about what we are doing, the approach that we're taking, because we've discussed the approach. And if you want to change the approach, you need to have that person go before the executive council and understand and sign off on a pivot so that you're keeping the entire team focused as you pivot. And there are reasons where you would want to refocus your team. Things come up, but you don't want to do it without having a clear vision, and you don't want to leave the people that are their change agents in your organization trying to take on protection of their own focus. So what the charter does is if somebody does approach them and they say, I want to be next, I want to do it like this, you can be absolutely kind. I want to hear everything that you have for your input. You're going to be a great addition to our governance efforts, but here's our charter, and this is what we have to do. And I can't go off of that without going over and changing the charter. But I'll take you over there, and if you can convince them that this is what we need to do, I will even help you try. But otherwise, this is the train we're on, and it's already left the station. And oftentimes that's enough in order to keep the focus.
I think that's very important, Theresa. Thank you for that. I want to go to the very specific, deeper examples of why.
Yeah.
Mostly, we have seen the compliance is one of the big reasons that company people start data governance.
Yes.
But we also focus a lot more about data quality and data trust as one of the key areas for improving, to implementing the data governance. So are these three reasons, or there are more reasons for data governance as well?
There are more reasons for data governance. And oftentimes when I do review, they've got their charter, but the things that I notice that the auditors are looking for on the charter that are oftentimes not clarified is the two things that are right down here. The data governance office accountabilities and functions are not specific enough, or it did not specify the boundaries between data governance and data management activities. So one of the things that I want to point out here is that, what one auditor told me, that they get into these frameworks because they want to know that you're not just trying to check the box because you're being audited, that you're actually doing data governance and understand the value and the outputs that you're going after, that it's well thought out and well crafted. And so the charter is going to maintain focus, but it's also going to help you to clarify the boundaries of what your data governance office does and doesn't do. There's a couple of danger points in there, in that sometimes they want you to govern yourself. And we're starting data governance as kind of what I affectionately call a hobby. Data governance is a hobby, where we're got a research team together, and we've got a tool, and we're figuring out how to add things to the tool. But we're governing ourselves, and they want to know that you've got that oversight and that it's true governance, especially if you're a bank. And not something that's inside or a carve out of team members that already have another full-time job and they're doing this in addition. Although that's not a bad way to start. If that's how you start, by all means, start that way, but start. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think it did answer my question. So basically what we are writing in the charter is a little bit about like the roles and responsibility of the holding committee, as well as like scope of the data governance. What are we trying to do in that
Right.
the area of the framework?
Right.
That's included in the
Yes.
and does the objective of data governance like improving the quality of the data and this much data we are trying to improve, or the goals of data governance like mostly it's about like improving the overall the quality of the reports, the quality of the like compliance report is obviously the number one candidate, but what about the financial reports, what about the regulatory reports, what about the even the decision making or the
Right.
inventory reports or the supply
Right.
chain or the marketing? There's so many functions are there where there's so many analytics are
There are so
happening at
many
the same.
functions that are there, and it's really where you lay out your drivers. You're prioritizing what's driving you towards data governance and what functionality you're going to go after as your priorities. It is a recipe for disaster to try to deploy all of these functionalities at one time. So we need to know that you've looked at your capacity and that you are going after these priorities and you're going to stay with those priorities. And if you don't, if you shift your priorities, you're going to do it with intention and clarity. Where data governance teams often fall off the cliff is when we start going, oh, but we need this. Oh, now we need this. And they just keep adding to it and it becomes
That's
chaos.
really that what we have seen is
Yeah.
quite a bit because say we are like you're starting from scratch data governance and you have like the customers or the partners do have not very fair idea that how much they can govern in 6 month or 9 month or a year time frame, how much data they can govern and what should be within the scope of the
Yeah.
limit, and
Right.
what is the practical approach of doing it,
Right.
and frankly speaking how much is how chaotic the environment is, right? So it
Yeah.
depending upon if you have only have one report and the data is coming from a very nice ecosystem, then you know
Right.
it's governing that report will be much more easier. But if
Right.
you have 10,000 reports and data is coming from 100 different various systems, it would be very difficult to govern them, right?
Yes.
So how would you say, like, what is if you have to divide that from your practical wisdom, that how a typical organization, a large
Mhm.
bank like Citibank, for example,
Uh-huh.
they got penalized. I saw the news yesterday from hundreds of millions of dollar penalties of not
Mhm.
having data quality properly, or
Ah,
maybe a small size bank or a medium sized bank or financial institution or healthcare institution. What is
mhm.
some level of practical wisdom if you give
Yeah.
somebody?
Yeah, for me, the charter, the approach is the most important part because there's more than one way to approach data governance. There are those folks that want to anchor their program at the data warehouse and build their business glossary so that everything that's currently customer facing has a well thought out term. And then they're going to build out to their reporting assets. And then others want to crawl their entire ecosystem and identify their privacy information throughout, and their focus is this. So you want to be able to identify in your approach to data governance that these are the roles that we're introducing. This is our approach. This is where we're anchoring our program. These are the priorities that we are going after. And again, the charter itself is pulled together with the data governance team and signed off on by that executive council. That's an important piece that I see a lot of people miss, and that is that it's too changeable, or it changes, or we did it and nobody's looking at it anymore. So we really want to make sure that the charter is something that gets reviewed. I put it on the agenda for the council, and the scope of your program is decided with the council. And on that council, you have the people that have your overall data strategy, your inner operations, the right people that are going to be able to say, yep, I agree, this is going to be our approach. Yes, I agree, we've got the right number of, the right amount of capacity to pull this off. That's another area that you want to talk about in there.
So in the same question that Imran is asking, that should the data governance charter contain enterprise data governance principles?
Yes. Hi, Imran.
Um,
Nice to see you. And I also want to say hi to all of the other countries that we have joining us. South Africa is here. I saw we've got the Netherlands and Colombia as well.
Colombia. Yeah.
So that's very exciting. But yes, I do have a section for the data governance principles. What does data as an asset mean? Explain what that means, because a lot of times data as an asset washes over people. And I'm going to show a slide in just a minute. I do want to get to all the components of the
Okay.
framework.
Let's
So
go to the component. But before I think this is a very important question as well, that who decides the scope? It's the executive
yes.
council, which you are mentioning that, right?
Yes, the scope is decided in concert with the data governance team, who is working with the individuals, and the executive council.
Fair enough.
And they decide the scope and what you're taking on. And you're going to see more information on that, Raghav, in just a moment. So the next slide talks about what the data governance is. What do you need for your program? This is the what. There is a core build that is required for every data governance program. Without talking about any functionality, there are 3 things that every organization is going to need. And that is a data catalog, lineage, and a business glossary. Now, it is a huge benefit if you have all of these integrated in a single platform, and they can work together seamlessly. The metadata builds your data catalog, the code automates your lineage. Once you have these 2 things, you can then take an analysis of your data demand layer and build your business glossary based on the terms that are the most important for your organization. And now we can do that. So what we're not doing is saying, hey, give us the terms that you think are important, and people kind of mull around, or they pull up a report they do once a quarter. And that's where we start.
So
We're going to be very
I think let me just clarify a little bit, or ask a little bit probing question here. The data
okay.
catalog is all the data is available in the data catalog, right?
All
Regardless
of
of
it.
everything is available.
You
Data
can
lineage
crawl
is where
from.
the data come from.
Yep.
Technically, where the data come from, from right side to the left side, wherever it is,
Yes.
application to ETLs to
Yes.
data warehouse to reportings to everything, right? That's the data
Yes.
lineage. Uh,
Yep.
Business glossary is a little bit confusing sometimes, because the business glossary can contain all the business terms, important business terms, key
Yes.
critical KPIs and metrics,
Yeah.
or everything. Or I've
That's
seen that everything in data warehouse is also in business glossary. This is too much, but I want to understand that
yeah. I
what
have
should be in the business glossary.
I have a business glossary presentation that I do where we talk about the core conversations about building our business glossary that we need to have agreements on upfront. We agree that the people that are bringing the data into our ecosystem are going to know the most about it, and that we need to talk to them during the curation process or have them do the curation. We agree that a term should only appear in the business glossary once, with very few exceptions. I actually did make an exception to that. So maybe in the future we can have a conversation about the how to build that business glossary, but I do think that it's important that you have these capabilities to support your overall program, and that your business glossary is highly integrated with both where the data is coming in and where the data is being used, so that you can create that consistency at your data consumption layer.
Fair enough.
So now we want to talk about the data governance functions. So I've broken the next 2 slides into data governance and then data enablement. I found that especially if you've tried data governance and failed, it makes sense to go down the data enablement track. But the data governance functions, these are all very regulated, check the box, you have to do it, needs to be monitored, maintained with a strong degree. So once you are doing your core build, what is our priorities now? We can't pick everything all at once, but you may say we're going to plug in privacy and compliance. We're going to plug in regulatory policy and compliance, and work and focus on these 2 things. So this is where you start building out what your priorities are in creating that functionality over your core build.
So, for example, my priority is let's say
Mm-hmm.
privacy and compliance. So, what are the things? Uh, we have to do in top of the
Yeah.
core build?
Yes. So on top of the core build for privacy, we need to build our privacy domain. We need to identify all of the PII and also proprietary information. Don't forget to protect your company's proprietary information.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I like to see when I'm working with a company that has some policies around that, like comment fields should never be in your data warehouse. They are high risk for PII. You cannot do analytics against them. And if you're doing AI, you should have it approved by a ethics committee first and have special access to that. So we want to be able to talk about what's important and what we need to build out with each area, and how we go forward with that is going to be on an upcoming slide.
Okay.
Once we have a few our data governance objectives, what do we want for data enablement? This is the self-service tools. A lot of companies, their priority for data governance is not privacy. Their struggle is that they've lost confidence with their data consuming constituents, and they need to get their self-service area up and running with quality data. So we need to plug in the self-service tools, some engineering and discovery. We want to deploy the collaboration and workflows within the tools. So each one of these data enablement items need to be built out and deployed in our organization as well. So this is the what we're going to do.
Yeah. So this is more like a defense and offense approach. The data governance is more defensive, so to protect your organization, and data enablement is more like offense to make more data available to end user. Is this the right way to think about it, or this is a different way?
I don't see defense and offense coming up very often, but I do work with my clients to go through all of these functionalities, some of the underpinnings of those functionalities, so that we can prioritize the roadmap, so that everyone gets what they want. If they're being run by the business, they tend to want data enablement. If it's being IT driven and IT is at the table, they're going to want to check some of their boxes too. So then we're going to agree on which boxes we're going to check. And usually the defense wins.
So what we're saying is that there are so many objectives are there, like data discovery, collaboration. There are multiple objectives. There are various from the risk side, compliance side, as well as of like the data enablement side. And how do we prioritize each thing is I think that when you should contact you.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Kwame.
Yeah.
So that is the what, and this is where we decide what are we doing, and what are we doing is going to appear in the charter, and how we're doing it is going to get pulled together. But we need to be able to say the what. This is what our focus is going to be on. The next part of a framework describes who, and this next piece, I want to make sure that I don't alienate any customers who are taking a grassroots approach at getting data governance up and running. But this is the who. We have a data governance office that's centralized. We have a director. We need to describe, and oftentimes data governance itself will require us to reorganize how we are around our data ecosystem. And so how are we forming this data governance office? Who is on the enterprise, the executive council? And then how are we plugging in the various players to contribute to and draw from this central team and the centralized tool? So data governance, we want to be able to describe how we are organized from a control perspective. And so I encourage people to say, this is how we're organized. And if you don't yet have a centralized office, it doesn't mean you need one right away. A lot of companies are like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to start my whole data governance by reorganizing. It's okay. Let's start with a carve out from the various players and create a task force. But at least we need to be able to say who in our framework.
It can be sometimes I have seen this is a manager level position. Sometimes I see it's a director level position, which is doing the data governance office, leading it. Sometimes I've seen the CDO is directly responsible for data governance.
Absolutely.
As well. But most of the time, the organization have the CDOs, have the larger
Right.
data governance office in place, maybe 5 people, 7 people, 10 people sometimes.
Absolutely.
But
As long as you
I
can
have seen multiple
explain.
times there's only one person is doing data governance overall,
Yeah.
right? So
Yes. As
that's
long as
but you need to have a clearly defined that who is responsible person for it
yes.
and what they are doing to do and why are they doing.
How
That
are
should
you
be clear
building these
with the
conduits
various
out?
documents, which are
Yeah.
like charter and process document.
Yes. And there are companies that are large global companies that have a centralized approach. And then there are the companies that don't have a centralized approach. And I can only show one slide. We're going to create a who around your charter that is going to describe how you are organized around data governance. And it's important that you be able to include that and speak about that as part of your framework. Data governance also presents new roles in the who. So there is a data
I
governance.
think there is a very good question coming from Bob Senior. Let me put this. What if an organization is smallish and doesn't have the resource to fill these roles?
Yeah. The who that I was presenting was not about roles that have to be filled, but simply to be able to describe who is going to be doing what in your data governance area. Do you have a carve out? Is it a full-time position? Are you grassroots? Sometimes it's just people that are passionate about data governance, and it's kind of a task force. So I am not prescribing to anybody that this is what you need in order to support your data governance program, but I needed to show the slide of how are we organized around our data governance. So think
what
of
you're
this
saying
like
is,
your accounting practices in a business. There are companies that are big enough that you have accounts payable on one floor and accounts receivable on another floor, and your general accepted principles and practices are guided by how large your organization is. It's the same with data governance. It's going to
so
depend.
it is something like similar to like we have a when the security drill happens, somebody from organization take a hat. No, I am the in charge for the security, so that I
Right.
will walk everybody down. So it's something like the part. It's a part-time role that hey, if in
Absolutely.
this case I'm the steward for this data to manage it, and it's a part-time. But my other responsibilities, I'm a business analyst or I'm a
Yes.
data engineer or whatever the position might be. Mostly
Yes.
what you support is from the business side who owns the data at the executive level, and the data stewards are mostly the people who are actually the business analyst kind of people, right?
It depends on each customer and what they desire out of their program. Those roles might change a little bit. Thank you for that, Bob. And I'm really happy to have you join us. And I encourage anybody to do a Google on him. He's got a lot of really good stuff out there that I've certainly learned a lot from. The roles and responsibilities that data governance introduces need to be very well framed out. This is an area in the charter that if I were the queen of a company and they presented me with their framework, I would be asking detailed questions in this area. And if they couldn't get to the answers, I'd send them packing and tell them, let's close these gaps up. It is really important that you are able to describe your roles in your organization. And I do see, hi, Carlos, the data stewards people from IT or from the business. That is dependent on the customer and dependent on the industry vertical. I like to say that your data stewards are on the business side and custodians are on the IT side because it gives people that additional context. It doesn't work for every industry vertical that way. And it doesn't work at the data catalog as cleanly as I'd like it. But it really does depend on what works for you. And it's not the same. Otherwise, oh gosh, I wish I could just say, here's what a steward is and does, and here's what an owner is and does, and never have to edit it again. But oftentimes, what the goals are in your plan will change the roles in the beginning. And you may start small with what they're already doing and bringing it into the tool, and then expand the role and say, all right, now our owners are also going to approve access requests. That's something that I don't recommend doing right out of the gate because sometimes that's when we lose them. But we might be able to have a broader conversation on that too. Look me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to start a conversation around what I've seen that works and then draw from some of the other experts that I see that are joining this LinkedIn Live too. And I'm not nervous about that at all, you guys. Thanks. So being able to.
Wonderful. So I think we got to the roles and responsibility where
Yes.
the council is there. Then that we have data governance office, which is basically responsible for managing everything. We have data owners, who are the
Yeah.
executives, and we have the stewards who are basically doing the most of the curation work. The council is giving all the money, resources, and everything for the
Yeah.
program.
And different tools are going to have
And the
different
tools.
possibilities. So this is important. If I'm in a tool that allows for me to do a term analysis, which is spectacular, a term analysis tells me how many times this term appears on my reports. Is it in the data warehouse or is it not in the data warehouse? What is the originating source? How many metrics is that term involved in? Being able to start your curation process with that kind of information is so if I have that capability, then I'm going to want the first thing we do when we're doing a term is we start with asking a custodian to present a term analysis.
So let's have the term analysis discussion in the how process.
Many tools don't have that. So I can't go in and say, this is how you do this. I try to get some information, but a lot of times that's going to impact the role as well.
So we have a roles and responsibility. Let's move forward to the next section.
Excellent. Let's do that.
Which is the most important, I would say, the when.
This is the roadmap. And I see a lot of different kind of styles and roadmaps. It's kind of a style issue. My roadmap has like 14 different swim lanes on it, if you will. But I really need to know, how are we going to envelop our environment? What are we crawling and what is our crawl plan, right? So this is an opportunity for us to align our crawl plan with the goals in the charter. So what I don't want is for the IT team to go out and just crawl everything, set up the organization and start crawling the entire environment. If I'm anchoring my program at the data warehouse, I need a specific crawl here, and then I'm going to organize myself. Also, data governance will need a single server crawled multiple times, depending on what's on that server. And I am organizing my information into my pipeline layers. So L1 is where your data originates.
So I think we are going a little bit, let's keep on focus onto the roadmap. So then what the roadmap is having in at very high level is the implementation plan for the data governance.
Right. So what do we need to do?
The first implementation, what I'm understanding, is around the tool implementation, like bringing the data from the source system into OvalEdge platform or any other tool to kind of keeping into that area, right? So that is the one area, which is a technical part. Then another areas are the different pillars, as you mentioned, like data governance, the
pillars
the
are about
glossary build out, etc.
Yeah, I want to stop at the pillars for a minute. There are certain things that that we need. We need services. Data governance is a service to the organization. How are people going to request an additional crawl? How are they going to request a term analysis and things like that? And this is where you want to get rid of chaos. The pillars is all about removing chaos from your program. So the charter is focus. The pillars and the roadmap reduces your chaos. So
keeping the like what are the different pillars we want to go? Let's say privacy compliance is one of the pillar. The business glossary is another pillar, and are the specific domain is also a pillar that we want to keep it focused on the financial data. We want to keep it focused only for sales data. Is that also a pillar?
I have a roadmap for my domains that's separate than this roadmap. This roadmap talks about the training, the functionality, the service desk requests, the process and procedures. That's what this roadmap is for. I have another roadmap where I'm onboarding each one of my domains, and it starts with training, and then I get into their terms, and then there's additional things. So that my goal is to have 2 or 3 domains set up per quarter until we have everyone pretty much brought into the tool.
Okay. And then the training is to data stewards, or it is to end users, or it is to whom?
The training is for everything. So who are we training? is going, if you tell me that I'm going to be a steward, you need to be able to onboard me as a steward. So I build out data stories that say, here's your focus, here's the AD group you need to be a steward, and here is a training path, so that I've got, watch these videos, and then I'm going to add you to the monthly steward meeting if that's the one of the things we have. But I need to have that repeatable onboarding process, and that is done through that training swim lane of the roadmap.
Okay, so the training is like whoever want to get involved in the data governance program, not whoever, like whoever the company decides to involve in them, we need to train them in order for they to participate based on their roles and responsibilities.
Yep.
Wonderful. So I'm having a lot of questions coming out right now. I think let's take a couple of questions which is coming to the roadmap.
Okay.
So one is the approach in data governance for the roadmap can be the use cases like initiative of data projects or maybe by domain. Any comments on that part?
You know what? Hi, Carlos. I agree with that in the sense that we can start with one domain, and then as we're creating that domain, we're also putting in the underpinnings and going forward. I'm not a huge fan of doing it based on use cases, because the next domain's use cases are going to be different, and we're building out a sustainable long-term program. So I like to be able to say, here are all of the underpinnings that we're going to need, and establish those things, and here's how we're going to deploy these. The first domain usually takes the longest because I'm trying to hit the ground running, and we're going to do these things and solidify them as we go. And then the next domain, it's going to be a shorter amount of time. But use case rollout is kind of an IT approach to things. And what we're trying to do, unless your use case is like, we need accounts payable, and within accounts payable, I always go back to my finance analogies. We need accounts payable, and then the use case, and then to rate. But we've got to pull the whole thing together from an 80,000 foot perspective. So that's just my opinion. You may find someone else with a differing opinion on that, because different consulting firms do it differently. That means we will need two offices, a data governance and a data management, in the same organization, or should data governance be responsible for the data? This is really a great thing to point out. And thank you for this question, because it comes up a lot. Now, most of the time, what we've got in the charter is a very clear communication that the goal of data governance is not to supplant or replace the data management disciplines.
So no. So what are, like, for example, what is the data management disciplines and what is data governance disciplines?
The data management disciplines may be coming right here. Your analytics team and your data governance office is not going to create reports for analytics.
Okay, very good.
The data governance team is not going to replace your information security, who have been trained in privacy and the guidelines, and they're going to conferences on this information. They're creating the conduits for these folks to have a seat at the table that is going to create the transparency, the integration, the collaboration, and the refinement of things that they're probably already doing. And now,
so data governance, what you're saying is that bringing all the different teams together at one platform to have them collaboration, communication,
correct,
build a culture around it.
Yes. And that's plenty of work just for the governance. The other thing, and I just saw it again last week, is that you cannot govern yourself. So there is a lot of smaller companies who are doing carve-outs of the data management activities in order to get their data governance up and established. And I'm not saying not to start that way, or that you shouldn't or couldn't start that way. You absolutely can, and I will sign up to help you. What I am saying is that you want to be able to be specific about it in your framework. So I want to get to the process and procedures, and that is the how. And
so this is basically about how
yep,
we are,
this is
we
the
are
how are we
governing the data. How
yep,
we are governing the data.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So we want to be able to identify in these swim lanes, like how are we setting this up, but the specifics of this, and because I'm using Excel because I need a universal application, what we're doing and how we're doing this and when we will have it done shows up on the front page swim lane, but then each one of these swim lanes have a tab with a leader assigned in order to move this activity, identify the responsibilities, and how we're going to go forward. Now, sometimes people want to break that into a sprint or do it according to each style of each organization and where in the organization that they sit. So that is the process and procedures that are going to be needed. So let's say we want to set up our profiling. How does someone ask us to reprofile a table? If I have a new project starting and I am on the analytics team, I want to start with a fresh profile. So I need a service desk request so that they can say, hey, will you reprofile? Or I need to allow them to push the button themselves. We'll work that out. And that's the process and the procedures. And that's why I love, love, love the data stories in OvalEdge. It allows me to frame out all of my process and procedures, make it transparent, integrated, and adjustable. So
I think this is something that I want to a little bit dig deeper. So
okay.
Let's say that we have a data governance team. There are various processes we need to lay out for doing this. So the processes around, like, as you say, data quality, like reactive data quality. So what is the process around reactive data quality? What is the process around data ownership? What is the process around data profiling? Are you talking about these processes?
Yep. What is the process around collecting new data? So when we bring in new data, there is a service desk request that says, can you crawl this server? And when we crawl that server, we need to assign an owner and the DBA. And if it's an application, who's the application administrator? Then it goes to the security team. And the first thing they do before anybody gets access is scan it and protect the PII. Now I can open it up to the rest of the team. That process needs to be spelled out and repeatable. This is where you get chaos.
And also trained, because the people are not trained on it.
Right. And the training. And you're building it out, soup to nuts, in your data stories. So you're calling each other. I sent an email and asked you about that. When I get called into an organization to pull data governance out of the garbage can, it is right here on the screen right now. It's chaos, and it's in the process and procedures that is the most damaging. And so a lot of what I do is help organizations back into their framework once they've got it up and running, and they've done a lot of great things. It's just that we skipped over framework, and now it's time that we address that. And then I feel like a rock star.
I think this is, if I see this this whole data governance program, it have the various procedures around that area. Like, again, at OvalEdge, we have the pre-configured tools and services kind of laying out that program simply, but you need to adjust them. You need to make the workflow based on what fit in your organization, right?
Yes.
Whether the PII data need to be protected by a security team, or whether it needs to be protected by a compliance team. Like there can be some sort of a workflow changes and can happen around the thing. Or you need a 2 approval or 1 level of approval, or whatever the changes are. So, but there are so many programs are there. The thing is, there's so many programs.
There's so many programs. Is there a best practice around?
Is there a best practices for these programs you have available? Like, hey, do those 8 things, and then for medium-sized organization, and I'm good with that.
I don't have a best practice in that sense, but there are best practices that are emerging in data governance now. And you'll see that the word committee is a bad word today. The best practice is for you to be able to move your goals through a project methodology and not have big, expensive committee meetings. But I want to point out something that Imran said, and that is, in my roadmap, I do have the creation of the charter called out as a specific item. So this is not a linear presentation on what you need to build first, second, and third. this is everything you need to answer the who, what, why, how, and when. So you're absolutely right. You should put the charter in your roadmap as part of the data governance office.
Yes, I would think one more question is
Okay.
around like, should data governance office be sitting outside IT? Data management look like more like analytics and IT team.
Yeah, this is a big one that comes up in the beginning. And what I have an exercise that I do with my companies to find out where it will function the most effectively. So leadership in data governance is the end all of how well we're going to move through this. How are we willing, and what model are we going to use? So this is about the framework. I'm not talking about the model here, but when you get into the model and things like that, where data governance sits in your organization can change based on industry vertical and capabilities, knowledge, funding. I have it sitting in the policy risk management areas in some companies. I have it sitting in the at the COO office in some companies. I think having it in IT is not a bad thing, especially in the beginning. Having it in IT is phenomenal. If I see that there's kind of a push and pull going on between business and IT, then maybe I'll recommend something else. I think that if IT is a service-minded delivery to the business, it can absolutely work in IT very effectively. Oh, I see we got Greg here. Hi, Greg.
Wonderful. That's
So
good.
this is the process and procedures. Again, lean into your data stories as you're pulling all of these process and procedures, and make sure that you've called them out in your charter, in your roadmap as well. I want to talk about, it's 11:47. Oh, do we have time? Because there's next
Yeah,
slides.
I think we can take 5 more minutes.
Okay,
So
good.
like, I think this is very important that
Yeah.
what is the output of the data governance,
Yep.
right?
I
That's the real benefit the company or organizations are getting from it.
Exactly. I took 3 swipes at output, and I think it's important that we talk about output and the benefit of data governance from different vantage points. So for the organization, we have data as an asset. What does that mean? It kind of washes over people. It means that when you're looking at a report, we know where that data was introduced into our ecosystem, right? We can find it quickly. If it's a metric, we're going to tell you how that metric is calculated. We protect its privacy. We publish a complete definition. We manage and confirm the quality. We are looking to check these boxes at the data consumption layer when we say we are using data as an asset in our organization. So that's one output. Another output, and I apologize.
So I think the first one is when we are doing so many check boxes, really what we are building is the level of trust in the data, because that is the main problem we were having.
You're going to make confident decisions in your data.
We don't understand that, and what it does is that it provides the very accurate information to the business executive who's making a high level business decisions on this data.
Exactly. Okay. Now, this next one, it's wordy. If we send out a copy of this, please take the time to read it, because individuals also receive huge benefits. I'm only going to call out 2 of these. Analytics and BI developers have said to me, we no longer feel like we're treading water to produce quality assets. We can work with precision in concert with other data engineers, making sure to leverage the warehouse. Many of the non-value added activities we carried in the past have been reduced and removed so that we are focused on delivering quality assets we can stand by. Another benefit, an application owner, during upgrades of that application, we used to experience 2 weeks of broken assets after that upgrade because we never had a good handle on what was impacted downstream when we were making changes. We no longer have those issues because we're able to scope things. But everyone who participates in data governance has a benefit. Also, functionally, we have the ability to retire tech debt much more efficiently. We have the ability to make our policies searchable, linked to the objects that they apply to, and compliance can oftentimes be automated. So it brings additional functional capabilities to your organization as well. So I like to take all 3 swipes at the output. Now, this next 2 slides are my favorite, and I want to explain to you how I bring people over. This is no data governance. The wall of data is getting higher and wider by the minute at our companies. Even as I speak, as you sat here, the wall of your data probably has increased. So when we go up to that wall to get data, every time we need data, we've got big A, little a, and then A, like A maybe. Which A do we get? Who do I ask a question to? So if I need C and C is A plus B, is it A plus B or A plus B or A plus B or A plus B? And how do I make that determination? I'm very confused. Meanwhile, why do we have different values for A? Why do our reports never match? And what does C even mean? And this adds to the need for data governance. When you have governed data, I want to share with you that we are going up to the wall. We're identifying these critical data elements, and we are beginning the curation process. We are going to profile that critical data element. We are going to protect and classify it. We're going to attach our access policies. Now that we know the source, the originating source, it opens up proactive data quality measures. We are able to attach regulatory and compliance. Our stewards and owners give us wonderful 3-paragraph definitions on how it was developed. AI and ML is attaching their routines so that if this data changes, they can keep their standards high on their output, and we have the ability to collaborate. Now we're all working off of a golden wall of data that is getting bigger. So we're attaching all of this at the wall instead of trying to get it off the wall down here.
So what you're saying is that there's not a little a or capital A or A, there is only one A, which is critical data element. And
Yes.
you know that what exactly it is, whether it's a capital A or lower A or this one. And
exactly.
that way you are only one person, only one data for one definition is available. At that, everybody gets accurate decisions around it. Hey, I think, if you have 2 more minutes, you want to conclude that?
We can just sit here for lunch.
Yeah.
So we've got, in the past, we worked in silos with our data in our business. So we have analysts and they're doing things, but everything they're doing is facing away from everyone else. They're storing artifacts about the reports, but they're not accessible. They're not searchable. They're not transparent. Same thing with InfoSec. They may be doing things over here. So what data governance does is it organizes these individuals from working in silos to pulling the chair up at the table and then creating the process, procedures, functionality to make them integrated, searchable, auditable, and transparency for the things that are going to help everyone pull together. And that is the end of my slideshow.
That is the okay. So I think that makes total sense now. That we have a framework where we laid out the data governance program. The benefit of that program is integrated, searchable, auditable, transparent, so that you are compliance, you're high quality, your decisions are good, your data, you can use the data as a strategic asset to build more. You can sell data, you can do whatever you want to do with it.
Yep.
Wonderful. Correct. I think there is I think a lot of questions are coming up.
I love it.
I would still, we will try to answer those questions individually so that people can, so that we can answer those questions. But thank you, Theresa. This was a really, really informative session to understand data governance as a whole. And we will love to have another chat sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody who joined us from all over the world. I see we had the Netherlands here.
We have a worldwide user group, and
what a great group!
Great group, and really data governance enthusiasts are here. So thank you for audience, and thank you Theresa, and thank you Kayla and Shilpi to organizing this.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.